Bank holiday Monday in the UK. I've had the chance to rewatch the Andre Dirrell versus James Degale fight, and I watched it live on Saturday. I was 3 or 4 beers deep, and I had my young lady round at the house, so bit different. Able to watch it perfectly sober, cup of coffee, no company, and I've actually scored it slightly differently. I've scored the fight 115 to 111 in favour of James Degale. Now, having said that, whilst that is a relatively wide score, it's a close fight that I acknowledge could be scored in a number of different ways. Let me talk you through my scorecard briefly. I've given James Degale the first 3 rounds. I don't think that's overly controversial. I've scored it 10-9, 10-7, 10-9. I've also given James Degale round 6. I think he won round 6 clearly. I've given Andre Dirrell round 7, 8, 9 and 10. And I've given James Degale the last 2, 11, 12. Now the rounds that I think are controversial are rounds 4, rounds 5 and rounds 11. Now round 4 I scored to Degale, but it was a very cagey round without a lot of accent. The way I'm reading this is Degale knows he's got Dirrell hurt, he knows he's ahead, and he's waiting to counterpunch Dirrell. He's waiting for Dirrell to make a mistake. But because Dirrell is hurt and not fully recovered, he's reluctant to be overly aggressive in his engagement. So I view that as a kind of nothing round. I've scored it to Degale, but very, very slightly. I'd have no qualms whatsoever with that round being 10-10. No qualms whatsoever if you want to give that to Dirrell. Now, similarly, round 5, again, very, very tight round. I personally have scored it to Dirrell. I thought he pushed the pace slightly more in that round. But, again, I'd have absolutely no qualms if you wanted to 10-10 it or if you wanted to put it to James Degale. Round 11, I've scored to Degale. I think he comes on strong in the round, and I think he finishes well and does just about enough. But yet again, I won't repeat myself, but I can't. Those 3 rounds are very much swing rounds. Now, the difficulty here is of those 3 swing rounds, I've got it 2-1 to Degale, which brings my scorecard to 115, 111. Now, if you want to give Andre Dirrell those 2 rounds that I've scored to Degale, that being round 4 and round 11, then the fight comes in at 113, 113. I can see logic behind that. As I say, I couldn't argue if you decide to give Dirrell round 4 and if you decide to give Dirrell round 11. Whilst I would disagree with you, I don't think that's an outrageous decision, and I acknowledge they're very, very tight. So what I'm getting at is, whilst I've scored this 115, 111, I could accept 113, 113. To be even-handed, I could also accept you scoring round 5 to Degale, in which case you could potentially have it 116, 110, which is only 1 round off the very controversial scorecard of 117, 109. Now, where I'd be strong is I think rounds 1, 2, 3 and 6 are definite Degale rounds, and I think rounds 7, 8, 9, 10 are Andre Dirrell rounds. I also think round 12 is a definite Degale round. So I've got 5 definites to Degale, 4 definites to Dirrell. Now, with the 10-7 round in round 2, I think it is impossible to suggest that James Degale lost this fight. If you give him 1, 2, 3, 6 and 12, you've given him 5 rounds with 1 a 10-7 round. He cannot lose the fight on that basis. It can be a draw. And I could accept anything from 113, 113 through to 116, 110. But I feel the fairest score is 115, 111. So that's my scorecard, having watched the fight a second time. Let me know your thoughts on that. A few other observations I wanted to talk about. First, it's just a side note, size difference. Andre Dirrell looks massive in there compared to James Degale. Now, Andre Dirrell made the weight. I didn't necessarily think he was going to, because I know Al Heyman's not too bothered about the belts. And Andre Dirrell didn't fade in this fight, so there's nothing to suggest he was tight at the weight, really. But he looked really, really big at super middle, really big at super middle. And given the fact that he got dropped by James Degale, I'm not suggesting he goes up to fight Adonis Stevenson or Sergey Kovalev. But let's just say he has the option of a career at 175 ahead of him. James Degale, he's not someone I've previously considered as a small super middle. Let me know your thoughts on that. Is he a small super middle? Or was Dirrell just big? But I thought James Degale looked, whilst he was out-muscled by Dirrell, whilst Dirrell looked the bigger man, I didn't think it showed in the ring in terms of the action. I thought Degale was able to, push Dirrell back when he needed to. I didn't feel that size difference was necessarily to the detriment of James Degale over the course of this fight, but interesting nonetheless. Now, a few other things that Degale did well. I rate the Andre Dirrell jab very highly. Look at how he used that jab against Carl Frost. I keep harping back to this, but the first few rounds of that Carl Frost fight, the jab Dirrell is showing is exemplary. It's world class. Now, the way Degale was able to avoid that jab in the early rounds was exceptional in my opinion. The angles he stood at, the way he was able to quickly take an evasive step back, his reflexes, head movement, the leaning away, really superb. He totally negated the Dirrell jab in the early rounds, which I thought was absolutely key. It made it a much more even fight on the outside. And as we know, Degale is an excellent fighter on the inside. Dirrell is not an inside fighter. So I thought, Degale fought by far the more impressive on the inside, by far the more impressive body puncher. Much, much tidier on the inside than Andre Dirrell. But I thought on the outside, Degale did a good job at effectively evening things up by avoiding the jab. And I thought that was absolutely key. If we're looking ahead to Degale Frost potentially, the ability to slip the Dirrell jab like that shows he's going to be able to slip the Frost jab, which could be relevant. The ability to change distance was also remarkable from Degale, I thought. He was moving around nicely on the outside, against the Dirrell jab, which is a world-class jab in my opinion, but he'd be able to duck, lean, slip, and then he'd just find himself on the inside. He was able to sort of move in and out, fight outside, fight inside. Really, really like to see that. I thought it was ironic that Dirrell was complaining later on in the fight about Degale staying on the outside and avoiding a fight. After the way Dirrell fought against Frost, I thought that was quite hypocritical to necessarily complain about Degale's tactics in this fight. But again, that's just a side note. Now, this fight could genuinely have gone both ways. Now, I don't mean that at the end. And conversely, let me just talk about gambling briefly. I had a small bet on Degale in this fight. I was betting on a gambling exchange, and at the end of the fight, I was pretty confident Degale had won the fight. I didn't think it was that controversial. And I went online on a gambling exchange, and Degale was 2.26 to win the fight. In other words, the equivalent of 5-4. So you put £100 on, you get £226 back. Thank you very much. Amazing value. So not only did I bet at the start, I also bet at the end. And that made up for a terrible boxing betting week involving Golovkin and Mike Perez. Anyway, I digress. This fight could have gone either way. And I don't mean in terms of the scorecards, because I thought Degale definitely won. But let's put it this way. Degale was badly losing the second round. That was definitely a 10-9 Dirrell round. And then Degale lands that punch, changes the momentum, and suddenly it's a 10-7 Degale round. So what would have been a 10-9 loss becomes a 10-7 win. In other words, that one moment changed 4 points in this fight. Absolutely key. For me, it also put Dirrell into a defensive shell the next round, probably the next 2 rounds after that. It meant Dirrell didn't start coming into the fight more. To the second half, he took up more of a defensive construct. He didn't throw punches like he was throwing in round 2 till probably about round 7. It put him really defensive, and I think that was really, really key. Had that punch not landed, it could have been a different fight. And that's why, whilst I'm a big fan of Degale, a rematch would be no certainty. Because unless you land a punch like that, unless you hurt Dirrell like that, this fight could have been really, really different. This was I felt Dirrell was putting on a bit of a show round two, and as I say, that was a massive shift in momentum, and possibly put Dirrell, unsteady and back into herself for the next 2 or 3 rounds. His surges may have started a lot quicker. It may have been round 2 onwards had that not happened. And just with regards to that being a 10-7 round, you have to score it a 10-7 round because the ref calls 2 knockdowns. It was slightly unclear to me whether the second knockdown was a genuine knockdown. I'm not saying it definitely wasn't. I'm just saying to my eye it was unclear. There was a punch landed by Degale, but there was also a lot of wrestling and potentially Degale hitting Dirrell on when he was down or when he was on a knee. It was unclear. So I wasn't 100% sure whether that was a knockdown. But Dirrell was probably hurt, and I think had it not been called a knockdown, Degale, may have been able to obtain one anyway. So who knows? But yeah, I was impressed by Degale. He was trying to counterpunch, he was trying to push the action, and I thought defensively he was quite sound as well. I mean, often you saw Dirrell round 7, 8, 9, etc. would come and swarm in and throw fast combinations of straight punches, and they looked pretty good. But when you watch it back in slow-mo, Degale's guard is very tight. Degale was not really taking punches with the Dirrell flurries and the Dirrell combinations. He also had a good chin. He took a few shots from Dirrell and looked fairly sturdy to me. We've never seen Degale really hurt in a fight or dropped in a fight, so he's got a good chin, he's got a solid defence, and part of that defence isn't just his guard, it's the way he can take a step back, the way he can slip shots, the way he's so tidy on the inside. He's really well-rounded. Switch hitter, outside, inside, clearly carries power. The way he dropped Dirrell, we didn't see Frotz or Abraham hurt Dirrell like that. This guy clearly carries power. What I would say, the big issue with Degale in this fight, apart from activity, obviously his work rate dropped around 7 to 12. The big issue was the fact that he wasn't throwing enough combinations, and Jim Watt picked up on this. It was single shots, just throwing one punch here, and for a counterpuncher like Andre Dirrell, that kind of worked really into his favour. So that was the only times really I saw Degale taking punishment where it was landing clean, was when Dirrell was counterpunching him, because maybe Degale wasn't flurrying enough and wasn't throwing enough combinations and was just relying too much on the single shot. So all in all, a lot to like. How highly do you rate Degale? Well, to me it depends how highly do you rate Andre Dirrell. I rate Andre Dirrell very, very highly. Look at the way he schooled after Abraham before the incident happened there. Look at how effective he was against Carl Frotz. I think Dirrell is definitely a top 5 super middleweight, and I think with James Degale's performance today, he moves to number 3 in the division, purely behind Frotz and Ward in my eyes. He's so well-rounded, Degale. He brings so many attributes to the table. For me, it genuinely is hard to see him, losing against George Groves, losing against Arthur Abraham. You'd give Frotz a chance against him, you'd give Ward a chance against him, you'd give Andre Dirrell a chance against him in a rematch. But I'm not seeing other people really at 168 right now who I'm thinking would live with James Degale. He's a mover, he's very awkward, he's got power, solid defence, really, really solid chin, and he showed a lot of maturity in this fight. There's a few things to work on. Need to up the work rate, not get complacent, and need to throw a bit more combinations. But I liked it, and on review I'm giving it 115, 111. Let me know your scorecards, let me know your thoughts, let me know your rankings for 168. Thanks for watching.